You work long enough as a cop, you stop believing in ghost stories. At least, that's what I always told myself. My name is Daniel Mercer, and I spent 12 years working night shift at a small-town department in northern Montana. Quiet place, snowy winters, bars that closed early, a jail with only 8 holding cells, each one older than the damn building. But Cell 6 was older than all of them. It sat at the very end of the row, cold, shadowy, barely big enough for a bed and toilet. No one liked putting prisoners in there, not even the rookies trying to prove themselves. We joked it was haunted, but the truth is, none of us had the guts to check on it alone after midnight. The weirdness always happened around that time. The lights would flicker, the camera froze, the motion sensor in the hallway activated even when no one was there. Chief blamed wiring. I blamed old infrastructure. But deep down, I knew something wasn't right. It was the night after Halloween when things took a turn. A snowstorm had rolled through, leaving thick ice on the roads. I was finishing paperwork when dispatch called in. Mercer. Local troopers brought in a transient, male, mid-40s, disturbing the peace behind the old mill. They're bringing him to booking. Typical drunk, fine. The troopers arrived with the guy, thin, pale, covered in dirt. His eyes were wide open, like he was terrified of something behind him. When we asked his name, he just whispered, "Don't put me in there, please." We exchanged glances. "In where?" I asked. His finger slowly lifted and pointed down the hall. Straight at Cell 6. I felt the hairs rise on the back of my neck. "We'll put you in 2 instead," I said. But he started screaming, this horrible, raw animal sound. "He's still in there. He's still in that cell." We assumed he was hallucinating. Snow hypothermia. Maybe drugs. I didn't know. But then something else happened. As soon as we let him past the cells, every door shook at once like someone inside each one kicked from the other side. All 7 at the same time. Clang, clang, clang. The transient dropped to the floor and crawled away from Cell 6, sobbing. Troopers backed up. "I swear to you, I swear." Something moved inside Cell 6. Something dark. Something staying just beyond the camera's blind spot. We put the man in Cell 2 and called it a night. But I couldn't sleep. Around 1:48 a.m. I heard it. A scream, high-pitched, coming from the cell block. I ran down the hall and found the transient pressed against the bars, crying. "He's calling me. He's calling my name." Cell 6 camera was glitching, static, buzzing. Every few seconds the frame flickered black. I walked slowly closer. "Who's calling you?" He pointed again. Cell 6. The man who died there. That froze me. We'd had suicides, overdoses, heart attacks. But no one had died in Cell 6. At least, not officially. I checked the camera again, static. The timestamp kept resetting to 3:06 a.m., over and over. I went to open the cell door. The temperature dropped almost instantly. My breath fogged. The hallway lights dimmed. That's when I heard the whisper. Not in my head, not imagined. A real, distinct whisper scraping along the concrete floor. "Mercer." I dropped the keys. No one alive could have said my name in that tone. The next morning, I dug through old records, not digital ones. The stuff kept in boxes because nobody bothered to scan them. Employee logs, old arrest books, maintenance reports from the early 60s. That's when I found it. A yellowed incident report dated October 12, 1963. Prisoner Henry Lyle, arrested for assault, placed in Cell 6. Found deceased during morning rounds. Cause of death, strangulation. Notes, No signs of forced entry. Unclear how subject was strangled inside locked room. The name rang a bell. Henry Lyle. That was the same name the transient had whispered before we locked him up. My hands were shaking. I realized I didn't want to believe what I was thinking, but I had to go back that night. The shift dragged. The transient slept on and off, muttering. Every time I passed cell 6, I felt watched. At 3:11 a.m., right at the timestamp the camera kept resetting to, the lights cut out. Emergency bulbs kicked in, bathing the hallway in sick red glow. The air turned freezing. Then I heard it again, this time right next to my ear. "Mercer!" Every instinct screamed run. Instead, I aimed my flashlight at cell 6. For the first time, something looked back. A shape. Tall, thin, bent in ways a person shouldn't bend. Its face wasn't a face, just a pale stretch of skin and a mouth that opened way too wide. It stepped forward, not walked, not stumbled, stepped, like it had been waiting. My flashlight shattered in my hand from the cold. I turned to run, but the door behind me slammed shut. Hinges rattled, metal groaned. My radio transceiver hissed with static, then a voice whispered through, "Let me out." Not the transient, not anyone living. I bolted. When I got back to the main office, all the monitors were frozen on a single frame. A pale man standing in cell 6, staring directly into the camera, smiling. The transient was transferred out the next day at his request. He refused to tell me anything else. 2 weeks later, I quit night shift permanently. Cell 6 is still there, still freezing cold, still casting shadows that don't match anything else in the hallway. And every now and then, dispatch tells me, "Motion sensor activated in the jail's storage wing. No one's inside." Before I ignore it, I always glance at the timestamp. It's always 3:11 a.m., and the hallway always leads towards cell 6. My name is Officer Chris Langley, Highway Patrol out of Maricopa County, Arizona, and I'm going to tell you about the night I stopped believing these desert roads were empty. People think the highways out here are peaceful at night, nothing but quiet blacktop and a few semis rolling by. But anyone who works graveyard patrol knows the truth. There are things on the roadside that shouldn't be there, and some of them are still waiting for someone. The stretch of Highway 47 between Vicksburg and the Colorado River is mostly sand, abandoned gas stations, and boarded-up motels. But there's one place every trooper avoids, mile marker 88. Radios cut out, cruiser batteries die, dash cams freeze, and at least 3 officers before me reported a woman walking the shoulder, who always vanished before they reached her. I didn't believe any of it, not until the night I got the call. It was a boiling hot summer night, the kind where the heat sticks to your uniform and everything smells like melting asphalt. I was running speed enforcement when dispatch came through. Langley, 911 caller, reports a woman lying on the shoulder near mile marker 88, possibly injured. No other units nearby. Of course, mile marker 88, but I turned around and headed that way because that's the job. The desert stretched out in every direction, black and endless. The wind blew sand across the road like drifting snow. When I reached the marker, something immediately felt wrong. The temperature inside my cruiser plummeted, like someone opened a freezer door. I stepped out, scanning with my flashlight, and then I saw her. A woman standing on the edge of the pavement, not lying down like dispatch said, standing, her back to me, long dark hair whipping in the wind, wearing a pale gown that looked old-fashioned, almost like a nightdress. "Ma'am," I called out, "are you hurt?" She didn't respond. She didn't even flinch. The closer I got, the colder the air became. "Ma'am, I'm with Highway Patrol," I said gently. "Can you hear me?" The wind died instantly. She turned around, and I felt my heart drop. Her face was bruised and distorted, like someone had beaten her badly. But her eyes, they didn't blink, not once. They looked glassy, distant, unfocused, as though she wasn't really seeing me. Then she spoke, barely a whisper. "Help me find him." I swallowed hard. "Find who?" She lifted a trembling arm and pointed into the dark desert at an old, abandoned rest stop half a mile away, a place with a collapsed roof and broken windows. Nobody had used it in years. "Is someone hurt out there?" I asked. Her expression twisted into something desperate, almost terrified. "He left me there," she whispered. "He shouldn't have left me." I reached for my radio to call for backup, but the second I pressed the button, nothing but static. Every channel, static. "Ma'am, stay here," I said. "I'm going to get help, all right?" But when I looked back up, she was gone. Not walking away, not hiding behind something, just gone. I spun in circles, scanning the sand, the shoulder, everything. No footprints, no rustling brush, no sounds, nothing. That's when I made the stupidest decision of my life. I started walking toward the abandoned rest stop. Every instinct screamed at me to go back. But her words, "He left me there," kept echoing. As I approached the building, my flashlight flickered. The place smelled like dust, rot, and something metallic. I stepped over shattered glass and pushed inside. The walls were covered in deep scratch marks, not just random vandalism, frantic clawing, as if someone had been trying to escape. Some of the scratches had dried brown stains. Blood. Then I heard her, a woman crying softly from the far corner. I nearly dropped my flashlight. She was standing with her face buried in her hands, wearing the same pale gown. She looked wrong. Her hair hung wet like she'd been dragged through mud. "Ma'am," I said, "I'm here to help you." Her sobbing stopped instantly. She slowly turned her head toward me. This time her bruises were worse, holes in her skin, bone showing through, eyes sunken like she'd been dead for days. "He promised he'd come back," she whispered. "Who did?" She slowly lifted her arm and pointed behind me. I spun around. Nothing. But I heard footsteps, heavy ones, pounding across the broken tiles, multiple sets, a man's deep voice muttering angrily, a woman's whimpering, something growling. I backed up until I hit the wall. "We need to leave," I shouted to her. But when I turned to grab her hand, she was inches from my face. Her jaw hung twisted, nearly unhinged. Her skin peeled away. Black liquid ran from her mouth. She screamed, a distorted, agonizing shriek that didn't sound human. I stumbled backward and ran. I swear I felt fingers brush the back of my neck as I flew out the door. The desert air outside was like ice. Footsteps pounded behind me. Dozens of them. I could hear angry voices shouting, screaming, pleading. I didn't look back. When my cruiser finally came into view, I bolted for it. The second I threw myself inside and locked the doors, everything stopped. Silence. I jammed the keys into the ignition and peeled out so fast I kicked gravel into the air. I didn't look in the mirror until I was back on the highway doing 70. She was standing at mile marker 88 again, watching me drive away. A shadowy figure stood behind her, Tall, motionless, with his hand on her shoulder. Then they both faded. My radio crackled back to life. "Langley, do you still need assistance at marker 88? I forced my voice steady. "Negative. Area's clear." 3 days later, a missing persons file surfaced in an internal briefing. Emily Hart. Disappeared 6 years ago near that same rest stop. Last person to see her alive. Her boyfriend, who admitted he left her after an argument, claiming she was hysterical. He was always suspected, but the case went cold. Her body was never found. I think Emily never left mile marker 88, and I think she's still waiting for him to come back, trapped between the desert and whatever dragged her out there. Now, every time I patrol that stretch, I keep my eyes forward. I don't slow down. I don't stop, because I know she's still there, and she's not alone.